Welcome back. I'm Stephanie Rule. You're watching MSNBC, and we're talking President Trump attacking the media yet again. But this is a new one. While speaking at U.S. Central Command in Tampa yesterday, the president diverted from his prepared remarks to talk about recent terror attacks like Orlando, San Bernardino, and across Europe. He then said this.
It's gotten to a point where it's not even being reported. And in many cases, the very, very dishonest press doesn't want to report it. They have their reasons, and you understand that.
I don't actually understand that. The White House then released a list of 78, quote, undercovered global terror attacks in the last 2 years. On the list, the November 2015 terror attacks in Paris. Well, guess what? They must not have been watching our very own nightly news.
Good evening. France struck hard against ISIS tonight, just 2 days after the group claimed credit for Friday's terror attack.
Also on the list, the terror attack in Brussels last year. They must not have seen the Today Show.
It's 8 o'clock on Today, and coming up, evil has a name. I'm Matt Lauer in Brussels.
Here's one you might not have heard of, Garland, Texas. That is on the list, but if you're watching NBC News, you definitely heard about it.
Investigators here at home learning more about the two suspects shot and killed by police after they opened fire at a controversial event in Texas.
I want to take you live to the White House, where NBC's Peter Alexander is standing by. Peter, clearly this offensive is coming on the heels of Kellyanne last week talking about the non-existent Bowling Green massacre. How is the Trump White House defending this list when so many of the terror attacks did indeed get extensive coverage?
Yeah, the bottom line, this is clearly a White House talking point that isn't supported by the facts. Let's break some of them down for you by the numbers. As you noted, 78 of them they mentioned, 11 of them taking place in the United States. You noted some of the most significant ones. NBC News covered about 75% of them, 57 attacks on that list with a combined 745 deaths, hundreds of stories from NBC News. There were 21 additional stories that were not covered largely by NBC News, many of those taking place overseas, places like Egypt, Bangladesh, and Bosnia as well, for a combined 8 deaths. But the bottom line here is, for the White House, this reinforces the point that they want to make right now with the controversy surrounding their travel ban, focusing coverage on the fear of terror in this country. Here's what Donald Trump tweeted to make that point just a short time ago. In fact, overnight, he wrote, "The threat from radical Islamic terrorism is very real. Just look at what is happening in Europe and the Middle East. Courts must act fast." A senior White House official pushed back on this idea that they were overstating the facts here. Here's specifically how they described it. They said the bottom line is, the point is to show that the terror attacks have become so pervasive at this point that they do not spark wall-to-wall coverage. They once did, adding, "This cannot be allowed to become the new normal." The bottom line is, as the White House tries to, in effect, manipulate the coverage, to focus the coverage on what they want to be focused on, which is the threat of attacks from overseas, given all the court hearings right now that we're witnessing and all the pushback about this travel ban. This allows them to try to focus on that message, even if it's not reinforced by the facts.
All right, this cannot be allowed, except, of course, it's happening. I want to bring back Steve Schmidt and Jason Johnson. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. Steve, what is going on? What is this?
Politics, pure and simple. Look, there's always tension between security and liberty when it comes to matters like this. In a democracy, the country's been at war since September of 2001. But what the White House is doing here, what they're saying, is objectively not true. They're peddling and they're selling fear. All of these attacks have been covered. Everybody in America is aware that we face grave threats from radical Islamic terrorism. It's a real thing. But what the White House is doing here is politics, pure and simple. Is it politics, pure and simple? Or is it, and again, this isn't a campaign. This isn't people trying to win an office. You're now governing. This is now the White House. So let's talk about Kellyanne Conway talking about the Bowling Green massacre the next day. And I'll tell you, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. The next day, she said, "I simply made a mistake." But now Cosmo magazine has said, well, she actually said this to us 2 weeks ago. TMZ said the same. So are we to accept, Steve's premise that this is just politics?
No, these are a bunch of liars. They're just liars. It's not.
Okay, because that's different than politics.
Yeah. They're just lying, and they're promoting a very, very dangerous myth. The way the Trump administration views terrorism like it's G.I. Joe versus Cobra, like they're all just working together and we have to stop them. Many of these attacks have happened for different idiosyncratic reasons. They're not all necessarily connected by Al-Qaeda, and if we try and push them in this broad brush, it actually damages our internal and international security. We have to understand why terrorism happens and not just claim it's all part of this massive attack. And I'll also say this, hate crimes in the United States are a form of terror as well. White nationalists attacking synagogues and attacking people of color and attacking Muslim Americans are terrorism as well. And those aren't things they're putting on as part of their list.
All right, Steve, hold on. Then would you say this is politics or lies?
Well, it's lies and furtherance of politics. I mean, they're not exclusive of each other. This stuff's not true. Look, I mean, I've talked about this a great deal. It seems to be the premise of this administration. If the leader believes it's true, it must be true. It's pernicious in a democracy. The total lack of credibility out of this White House, the magnitude and the everyday misstatements from the president, from the press secretary, from the senior advisors. You've never had a group of people working in that building ever who every day lose more and more credibility with the American people. I mean, you can't take what they say at face value on nothing.
Then putting out a list like this, does it open the White House up? Sort of, you were talking about hate crimes, to talking about gun violence. On the heels of this, can't we see lists coming out from advocacy groups saying, well, let me tell you about how many gun-related deaths happened in the United States? Does this not put the White House in a vulnerable position?
I think anyone in America can put out whatever list they want. I mean, the point here is the list that they put out saying that none of this stuff was covered in the media. But it's just objectively not true. I mean, the sun rose in the east this morning. It will set in the west. Like, the sky is up, not down. It's stuff like that.
But see, here's the thing. I don't care how many lists you put out. If you don't have a plan for fixing it that makes sense, then you're still wasting all of our time. You can blame the press, you can blame the news, you can throw as much monkey poop on the wall as you want, but until they have a plan, and obviously their ban doesn't work, and obviously what happened in Yemen doesn't work, until they actually have a plan to solve some of these problems, these lists are a waste of time and another example of administration that is clearly not capable of solving the #1 problem that they say got them elected.
All right, we're going to take a break.